What will your storyline be in 2018 now that the holiday rush is over? LegalZoom can help you make this a memorable year before all the distractions take hold. Make this the year you finally get serious about launching and running your business. Rest a little easier knowing your family's future is squared away with the right estate plan. LegalZoom has been helping people like you take care of their dreams and responsibilities for more than 16 years. They're not a law firm, but they have the resources to keep you on the right path, including advice from their network of independent attorneys, all at your fingertips. Whether you want to take your business to the next level or take control of your family's future with an estate plan, LegalZoom plugs right into your life so you can take care of the things that matter most. Get off to a strong start in 2018 at LegalZoom.com today and get special savings when you enter Golic in the promo box at checkout. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Glad you're with us on this Tuesday morning. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Phone guest joining us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And I believe it's 7 o'clock on the East Coast right about now. If you're an Alabama fan, you're probably still up, wandering around the streets somewhere, having a really good time about the way things ended for the Crimson Tide on Monday night. And if you're a Georgia fan, you've probably been asleep for a while and won't be crawling out of that warm, cozy place that you're in for a while because of what almost happened.
You know, the Georgia fans had a heck of a lot to cheer about, certainly early on in that game. I mean, what their defense was doing. This is the first half possessions for Alabama. Missed field goal, punt, end of half. I mean, so
not good.
Georgia defense, give them a lot of credit. And so you're shutting out Alabama at halftime up 13-0. Kind of, they were in the reverse position the week before against Oklahoma,
right,
when everybody thought that game was over going into halftime. And as we find out, 60 minutes really does mean 60 minutes, and a lot can change. And one of the big changes we're going to talk about is the change in quarterback that Nick Saban made from a starter that went 25-2 to Jalen Hurts to a freshman who a 19-year-old who hadn't played a meaningful snap the entire season. Tua Tagovailoa, who is,
all right?
Yeah, I'm.
Seemed like you got stuck.
Oh no! Do you think it's going to be amazing to me? I haven't seen a guy going 25-2. A, get pulled out of the biggest game of the season, and B, not be the starting quarterback next year. I mean, not be.
Yeah, this is rarefied. This is rare air. There's no question.
Really, so I'll say again that as we get into this, was it more amazing that he pulled a guy who's 25-2 or put in a guy who is a true freshman and never had a really meaningful snap all year?
I think maybe the most amazing thing was what he said to Artem Arnaldi after the game. I've never been happier in my life. Which is something you just don't hear a lot from Nick Saban. We'll get into that with Junior in a little bit, who'll join us from Atlanta. Lots more on the national championship game throughout the morning. We'll also have Joey Galloway, Kirk Herbstreit. They'll be joining in throughout the morning to talk about it. But let's start this hour, as we tend to do most hours, with...
It's time for... Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not,
it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start off the top in the NBA. Timberwolves defeated the Cavs by 28 Monday, Minnesota's largest win against a team that entered the game at least 10 games above 500 since 2001, and this was about as bad as you can get for LeBron James.
Yeah, it was. LeBron had a plus-minus of minus 39, the worst in the 1,101-game regular season of his career. His prior worst was minus 34 against the Warriors in January of 2016, so... Yeah, listen, there's 82 games. You're not going to be up for every single one of them. This is a bad one. But, listen, Minnesota has done this. Minnesota led the entire way. It was Minnesota's sixth win without trailing this season, two more than any other NBA team. Minnesota in the West is sitting at 26-16, 7.5 games out from the Warriors, are sitting in that 4 spot. And Cleveland, they're, 26-14 in the 3rd spot. They'll be just fine, but This is a bad game. But it's not like early on Cleveland was losing to the below 500, not making playoff teams, of last year when they were getting beat. Minnesota, we talk a lot about Minnesota and what they're trying to build out there. And how well they're playing, and you can tell by their record and what they're doing. And the stat I just gave you, that's a good team that the Cavs lost to, but it's one of those that obviously got away from you as well, because I don't think anybody in the world thinks Minnesota's 28 points better than the Cavs.
No, and in the weirdest stat of the morning in terms of the NBA, for whatever reason, in regular season contests, LeBron James now falls to 5-12 against Jimmy Butler teams.
Isn't that weird?
I can't make heads or tails of that one. All I can tell you is it just is. As we continue.
Off the top.
Staying in the NBA, Steph Curry does what he does, pacing the Warriors with 32 points Monday as the defending champs top Denver 124-114.
There was that. Remember last year it was Kevin Durant with the hyperextended knee. How is he going to come back from that? But it was kind of a one-off. That certainly can happen out there. Because this year with Steph Curry, it's an ankle, and he's had the ankle issues. He's had the ankle surgeries before. So, and it was one of those, he's going to be back in a couple weeks. He's going to get reevaluated in a couple weeks. Could surgery be down the road again? There was a lot of kind of ifs for that. I'd say he's come back from that pretty well.
Yeah.
And doing pretty well, and having Golden State right where everybody thought basically they were going to be, and that the only thing that could bring them down would be injury. As I said, last year to Durant to miss significant time. Steph Curry missed some time this year, but really
really hasn't slowed him down.
The injury would have to be in playoff time.
Correct.
Like a couple of years ago when Steph Curry did get nicked up a bit when the Cavs beat them. He was nicked with that ankle. So that's something you wait to see is in playoff time, they have all their pieces together.
By the way, Steph has won 2 MVP awards, so let's give him our MVP moment of the week, brought to you by Sport Clips. Check in online at sportclips.com/check-in and claim your spot today. We move up one spot in
Off the top.
Trae Young and the 9th-ranked Sooners host number 8 Texas Tech this evening at 7 Eastern on ESPNU. Young leads the nation in points per game, 29.4, and assists per game in 10.2.
But, and oh, by the way, since assists became official stat, 83-84 season, no players led Division I in both. But going up against Texas Tech in efficiency and defense. Texas Tech's defense efficiency 2nd. Points per game 4th. Field goal percentage given up 5th. Assists per game 3rd. This is the toughest defensive team that Trae Young is going to face this year. So let's see how he squares away here.
Yeah, and by the way, right now Oklahoma's on pace to be the highest scoring offense in Big 12 history, while Texas Tech, to what you're talking about, on pace to be the stingiest defense in Big 12 history. So clearly something has to give in this game tonight on ESPNU.
Off the top.
And we finish up off the top with John Gruden, going to be introduced as the Raiders head coach at a press conference today, 3 o'clock this afternoon, East Coast time, noon on the West Coast. Gruden's rehiring marks a 16-season gap between Raiders coaching stints.
Yeah, again, not between the last time he coached, just between coaching the Raiders. And this was one of those, obviously it came up every year when we would have him on, his name would pop up. And at a point you start to wonder, okay, is it too long for you to go back? We thought that maybe about Herm Edwards, who ends up going after 9 years, goes back and coaches again, is coaching Arizona State, and now Gruden. Kind of you could tell was getting that itch. I'll never forget the interview we had with him when his name was coming up again, and we had him on, and he was that was an interview where he was the most of never say never, just never sure, where you're like, he may really be thinking of coming back. That itch has come back to get him, and 10 for $10 million doesn't hurt either, but he is a coach at heart, and I'm more surprised than not when the coaches stay away for good then end up staying away for a little bit and then coming back, which it took him a little longer, I think, than a lot of people thought. But I think most people believe John Gruden is back where he wants to be, and that's on a sideline.
Right. And again, that 16-season gap between coaching the same team, that's the largest gap between head coaching stints with the same team in NFL history. That, according to the Elias Sports Bureau. The other one that's closest, I think, is when Joe Gibbs left Washington and then came back in the early 2000s to do that. I was in St. Louis working for a local station there when Dick Vermeil came back and took over the Rams in 96 or 97. I think it was 97. But that had, he was with the Eagles before, so that was a longer time frame or close to the same time frame, but those are two different teams.
And let's add to it, congratulations, to the Bears. They have a coach as well, right? Matt Nagy, who is the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, a 39-year-old So you got a youngster being that head coach, an offensive-minded head coach to work with the young quarterback in Mitch Trubisky.
And by the way, he's a guy who had a deep dive at Trubisky because the Chiefs last year, when they were looking at the quarterbacks, looked at Trubisky as well as Patrick Mahomes, whom they settled on taking and moving up in the first round to get.
Quarterback from Delaware years ago.
How about that?
Uh-huh.
The Mud Hens, the
Blue Hens.
Blue Hens.
The Mud Hens would be a minor league. The Mud Hens
Toledo Mud Hens?
That was Klinger in MASH. That was the team he followed. Yeah,
the Toledo Mud Hens. That's exactly right. Yeah. Oh, we said that at the same time.
How about that, huh?
We should have our own show.
Okay.
All right, we continue on Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN2. You mentioned the youngsters. Let's bring in our youngster, relatively.
The youngin.
Your progeny, Mike Golic Jr. joins us from Atlanta. Mike, I see you saying this on Twitter all the time. So last night, were you living your best life?
I was living my best life to an extent. Tua Tagovailoa grossly outclassed me in the living of his best life category. That guy is going to be able to work off that one in Tuscaloosa for a while.
Mike, you were there on the sideline in the stadium. If you're on the field, was there any buzz of that happening? I mean, was this completely out of the blue when we saw Tua take the field? How did that go down?
Yeah, we had kind of gone into the game knowing that this was a possibility. This goes back all the way to the semifinal game where Jalen Hurts had been sick during the week, so you had heard Tua Tagovailoa had taken more of the first-team snaps than normal because of that. There was a real possibility of seeing him there, and then going into tonight, you had heard rumblings that maybe there were some packages or a chance to get him in the game, and then you just saw the way that Jalen Hurts struggled in the first half. Alabama was able to get basically nothing going on offense. And it seemed to be the right time to do this. But that being said, making a quarterback change for the first time all season and going into the second half of the national championship game is something that really only Nick Saban's going to have the gall to pull off.
Well, and the cachet built up to pull off. There's no question about that. Speaking of pulling something off, I have a question for you. We were all in Atlanta yesterday doing shows and doing all the kinds of stuff. Your dad and I had to hump it back here to do this show. How did you get out of doing your show this morning and stay down there and party like you're 28 or something?
Well, listen, when you factor in travel to and from the stadium, I mean, Ray and I probably weren't back to the hotel till 1:30, almost 2 o'clock in the morning after the game had taken place. And so the idea of turning around and doing the show in about 2 hours after that wasn't one that I think anyone at work thought was in their best interest. They're already worried enough about me going off the cuff, doing that basically off no sleep, coming off of the euphoria of the end of that game was probably going to get everyone fired.
Oh, get out of here. You're 28. Come on, suck it up.
You can pull those all-nighters.
Get out of here, Junior, with that weak sauce. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I'm filing an official protest. It sounded
good, though. I just really didn't want to work.
I think it sounds good as well. And you notice that was Trey ripping you, not your father. So,
Exactly. Who do you think I learned it from?
Oh, there you go. Attaboy. That's my boy. So in this, last week we talked about Oklahoma. We figured that game was over going at halftime, and then, boy, the adjustments that were made, and Georgia comes back in the second half, wins it in double overtime. Here, Georgia's up 13-0, 20-7 at one point early on in the third quarter, and the rest of after that touchdown in the third quarter, interception, punt, end of the half, and then they go into overtime. What did you see that was different out of them, if anything, or adjustments from Alabama, if anything, that changed at that halftime?
Yeah, it really felt eerily similar to what we saw where Oklahoma stopped doing what had worked for them in the first half of that game. For Oklahoma, it was tempo, and for Georgia, it was actually allowing Jake Fromm to be a part of the game plan. They gave him one chance to win the game down the stretch of that, where he threw a ball out in the flat to Swift that was, grossly airmailed at that point. But really, beside that, we had seen a ton of the Wild Dog, their version of the Wildcat that netted them a touchdown early in the game, but later on just seemed to be playing a little bit scared. Jake Fromm had some great throws in drop back, but mostly he makes a living working off that run-pass option, and I thought there was just a decidedly fewer opportunities of that in the second half, and without stressing the edges for Alabama, without moving them back off the ball, they were able to finally just load up in the box, try and stop some of that run game, and then maybe mix in a timely pass breakup here or there. Alabama, a top 10 team in disruptions on the season, so think sacks, pass breakups, interceptions, all that stuff. They're used to jawing the ball loose in situations like that, and I just thought Georgia stopped taking chances in their offense, even the calculated ones that in the first half had netted them a lot of really impressive chunk plays in the passing game, which we know even coming off the semifinal action wasn't the way that they had normally wanted to get down.
Well, no, Fromm I thought played really well. There was one throw I think on the drive, the possession they had before what we thought might have been the game-winning field goal in overtime, where on 3rd and 8 it looked like he rushed that throw,
right?
And it just seemed like at that moment he didn't play with the same natural sort of relaxed motion that he was playing with in his passes the entire game. But I want to go back to Tua for a second, because everybody's talking about, the touchdown to Ridley and the touchdown to win the game to Devontae Smith. I really thought there was one play early in that second half that really sort of kept him going. It was that 3rd and 7 play on his first drive when they're down 13-0, and he rolls to the right, and he looks like for all the world that he's going to get sacked. There are 3 Georgia defenders around him, Junior, and somehow they all sort of bounce off each other. He runs for 7 or 8 yards, picks up the first down, and is able to get the first touchdown on the board for Alabama with a touchdown throw. And it certainly seemed like if that had gone sideways and they had made that sack and made it 4th and 17 or whatever it would have been, then you're thinking, well, maybe this might not work out. But for him to be able to do that, I really felt like that got his legs underneath him and sort of gave him the energy he needed to realize he could play at this level.
Well, it was really necessary, because you think about the first drive of the second half, I believe it was a 3 and out, and you start to wonder, all right, how long is Nick Saban going to let this experiment go in the other direction? Certainly we had seen Jalen Hurts had gotten the hook after the first half, but how long was he going to let this go the other way if it really looked like it wasn't starting to work? And that was one of those moments. It reminded me a lot of, Eli Manning spitting out of that cloud of bodies in the Super Bowl to ultimately make a big play there. And I leaned over to someone on the sideline, and we all kind of said the same thing. If this game ends up going Alabama's way and they pull this back, we're going to circle that particular moment, that 3rd and 7 spin out of a sack, as the moment where everything changed for this team. And I'd firmly stand by that. That was, listen, this is the top dual threat quarterback in the country, and as much as we had heard about his arm coming into the season and throughout the year, you have to remember there was dual threat for a reason, and this guy time and time again made plays not only like that to net first downs, but just to get out of pressure and get the ball out of bounds a couple of times, which we know is monumental for a freshman kid, and really displayed. I think part of the reason we talked about them bringing Jalen back, the first returning starter for Alabama since 2013, you've got a chance to return this kid, a live arm in Nick Saban's offense that you rarely get to see, married with some of that same run game ability that we saw down the stretch where it was, lead QB runs down the road the rest of the game to really salt it away for them.
And it has to be said continually, the reason that spot opened up for a scholarship for Tua at Alabama is because Jake Fromm turned his down at Alabama to go to Georgia. That's just amazing. These two guys will be battling for years to come. And Mike, take it from that side. Unfortunately, your one shot in the national title game ended the ways Georgia did, though theirs went to overtime. But a loss is a loss. So talk to it from their side of it. They had the lead in this game to kind of see that deflate to the loss and just going forward for this team and the pieces that they have.
I can't imagine how sick that group is going to be for a long time. We were sitting down on the sideline, and I saw them wheel the confetti cannons out there, and because that loser confetti is the worst feeling I have ever managed to know outside of, losing a family or a loved one or something like that. It was horrific. And so to watch those guys go through that, especially on that last play in overtime, you get a sack, it's 2nd and 26, and then you're up there playing 2-man, and the safety decides to leak over to the other side, and before you know it, everything is gone in the blink of an eye. So for this team, it can go one of two ways. And Nick Saban, actually, coming off last year's title loss, had probably the sentiment that I would hope Kirby Smart and this group could latch onto, which is don't waste the feeling. They took the feeling last year of losing that last minute play to Deshaun Watson in the title game and turned it around and brought it back to this season where they overcame so much. And for Georgia going into next year, where you'll have Jake Fromm, you'll have another 5-star quarterback on campus, you're still going to be able to keep a lot of these things going, and you've got the base of what could be the foundation for a really strong program going forward. You can't waste that feeling, because it can go the other way too, where you sulk and you let that feeling sort of pollute you in a negative sense going into next year, and there's a relapse. And so I think that's going to be a big thing, is how you use this to fuel you going forward and how long you let it affect you the way I know it can. I mean, there was a year after the game we played where I don't know if I went a day without thinking of it, and that wasn't always the good feeling in a positive sense. So Kirby Smart and their staff are going to have their work cut out for them, making sure these guys get their heads in the right space as soon as they get back for winter workouts.
Junior with us on the phone, obviously doing first and last, and is with us the first hour every day here on Golic and Wingo, except when he's sloughing off and staying in Atlanta, because he hung out with Kendrick Lamar last night. So listen, we'll go away from the field for a second. What'd you think of the halftime show, being in the blimp, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and who else you hung out with?
Yeah, being in the blimp was incredible. Obviously, the people at Goodyear were awesome for hooking that up for us, and I didn't know I was going to be a blimp guy until I got up in the blimp. Jason Fitz, who I was doing it with, was on the way up, white knuckles, sweating and crying. I'm trying to open the windows and see if I can stick my head outside. I was like a dog in the car. I was so excited to be out there for the trip and then to get to see the views that we got. I thought the halftime show was great. I know this is a sort of a new reach for college football to make this happen, and maybe the first rap concert I've ever seen where the guy is wearing like a North Face style coat the entire time and gloves. So certainly shout out to him for pulling that off amidst what was cold and rainy conditions on the outside for a long time. And listen, just getting to be down there and see the proliferation. We spent time on both sidelines of former players and pros now back watching this game, and we were down on the Alabama sideline in the second half where it didn't look like things were going overly well, and you saw guys like Derrick Henry and a lot of the former Tide players lined up over on that sideline looking a little uneasy about things, and one of the photographers still had got them together to kind of take the group picture, the alumni picture, and I look over there and I see the reason they're all so upset is because they're wearing 2 or 3 rings each, so they're wondering how they're maybe going to lose back-to-back championships, or what probably would have to be the first time ever for Nick Saban or Alabama. So you saw those visual representations of the standard, and I got to meet Tom Rinaldi last night, which was nice, and I didn't cry, which was an important moment.
Wait, you had never met Tom Rinaldi before?
No, I never met Tom Rinaldi. So
I find that unusual.
Came up to him. There was, a lot of that mutual respect, guys, that comes with 2 really accomplished professionals in their field. So I know it was probably a big moment for Tom too.
Yeah, we're going to see it another way.
Who was the other one outside of Tom?
Was there a third party there that you're not talking about?
Yeah, Holly was down on the sideline too.
Okay, I want to know, when you shake Tom's hand, does the sad music start to play behind it?
It does, but you know what? I wanted to be cognizant, because Tom's done a really good job of also building some of the humor into his routine lately. I didn't want to pigeonhole him as the really sad story guy, and so I kept it together. My lip only quivered a little bit.
No, he was peeling onions at the time. That's why. All right, Junior, get a shower and a shave, and we'll see you back here. All right, safe travels, my man.
All right, thanks, guys.
See you, man.
Later.
Yeah, by the way, you're talking about Saban losing or rings. He's got one for the other thumb now. I mean, he's got 6. He's got 6.
There are a couple of stats I'll save about this class.
Oh my gosh.
And the wins they had, and also, so we mentioned a little earlier, but for those that were with us, what one of the players did after the game that has major life implications more than just a national championship.
And it involves a ring, by the way. We'll get into that a little bit later. Coming up, we'll go back to Atlanta and talk to Joey Galloway about the impact of Tua Tagovailoa and how he did something that no QB in Joey's 15 years in the NFL career could do, and this kid did it at 19. No, 19. Golic and Wingo with you on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, and the Doors and Tua Tagovailoa certainly lighting the fire of all the Alabama Crimson Tide faithful. What a performance off the bench. And we're joined now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line to talk about it with Joey Galloway, our ESPN college football analyst, and, of course, played for Ohio State, played many years, 15 years in the NFL. And, Joey, I have a lot to ask you, but I've just been informed the most impressive thing about you this morning. You have a tea time at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I do. And your good friend Booger was supposed to be playing, but I don't know what happened. He called the Pinstripe Bowl. It was cold outside, and I seriously think that he will no longer leave his house if it's below 65 degrees. So he's tapped out. He can't go because it's too cold.
Marshmallow soft.
Yeah,
Marshmallow soft. By the way, what is the temperature going to be in Atlanta at 9 a.m.?
Let's see. I just checked, and it was right around 40 right now. And
that's respect. Respect, yeah. Joey. I have massive respect for you, and obviously everybody in Alabama has massive respect for Tua Tagovailoa and what he was able to do coming off the bench in the second half as a freshman and leading them to 26 points in the second half and overtime. And your analysis of the game-winning throw, I thought, was spot on. We played it earlier in the show. For those that weren't with us, explain what was most impressive to you about the 41-yard game-winning throw from Tua to Devonta Smith.
When I looked at the play originally, I thought, okay, Georgia was playing man-to-man, and the corner just got lost and couldn't keep up. And then once I saw it again, I realized they were playing cover 2. I mean, it was 2nd and 26. They're playing cover 2, so there's a safety on the hash, and the corner is supposed to reroute the receiver. Safety's supposed to be able to get over the top and stop the deep ball. You don't see quarterbacks throw a deep ball into cover 2. And Tua looks out here, sees the safety. He has an interview with Maria Taylor after the game, and he clearly says the safety's on the hash. Sees the safety on the hash, keeps him there, and decides to throw the deep ball and throws it on the money for a touchdown. You just don't see quarterbacks do that. That is a next-level throw for a quarterback, and especially for a freshman quarterback in that moment.
Were you surprised? I mean, we know and we have heard that there may be packages for Tua, even going to last week in the semifinal game, depending on what they needed and how Jalen was throwing. But all that said, were you still surprised when he came into the game in the third quarter?
I was so surprised, and I was at Alabama's spring game on the field, this earlier this year when Tua was throwing the ball, and people were talking about, this young kid could come in and start. And I'm thinking, there's no way. Jalen Hurts took him to the championship game. He was just a freshman at the time. There's no way this young guy's coming in to take his spot. And then I started to hear a few weeks back that Jalen Hurts would be on a short leash, and that, they would not go through another game like they did last season against Clemson where, they couldn't throw the ball. There were some throws that just weren't getting done in the pass game. And so I didn't believe it until Jalen Hurts went, I believe, 3 for 8 in the first half. And they said, let's go. We haven't put a point on the board. Let's make a move. And once again, Nick Saban looks like a genius.
Well, that is the point, right? I mean, what other coach do you think in that situation would have had not only the wherewithal to make the switch, but if it had backfired, would have had the sort of the reservoirs built up of good trust to sort of say, yeah, I understand why he did it?
I guess you make an excellent point. If it doesn't go right, Nick Saban's still the greatest college football coach of all time,
right?
So yeah, it's a big call. I mean, but Jalen Hurts was struggling. It was looking like Georgia's defense was going to be able to shut Alabama down because they had to run the ball. There was nothing they could do throwing. He was missing some guys, missing some reads, and so. When they come out in the second half, and I was, switching from one set to the next set, and I'm catching the TV as I walk by, and I look up and I see Tua in the game. I'm like, this is amazing. This is truly amazing that Coach Saban just said, look, let's go for it because this is it. This is our only chance. Let's take it.
As far as from the Georgia side of it, Georgia found themselves in the opposite position they were last week when they were down. Everybody thought Oklahoma was going to run them out of the stadium. They come back and win. Here, they're up 13-0 and then 20-7 early in the third quarter. What in your mind went wrong for them, or maybe would it be more right for Alabama or more wrong for Georgia?
Well, Georgia, first off, they started the game with 7 straight passes. I don't like that idea, but they did it. And then they started running the ball, and they run it for 94 yards in the first half. So this is the Alabama team that only gives up 91 yards per game. And so in the locker room, that Alabama's coming out and they're saying, you're not going to run the ball on us. That's just not going to happen. You're not going to run it. And so once Georgia goes from averaging 7 yards in the first half per carry down to 2.4, I believe, in the second half, now you're playing Alabama's football. Now you're playing what they are designed to make you do, which is stop your run and make you beat us with their second best thing, which is Jake Fromm throwing the ball, which he played pretty good in the first half. But, you know, we all know that when you're playing quarterback and you have the ability to run the football, it makes it a lot easier to throw the football. And so Alabama comes up. They're putting their guys in the box. They're going to be physical. And once they did that, once they came downhill and made Georgia go to the pass, things get a little bit hairy then, because now Nick Saban starts to mix up his coverages, starts to mix up his blitzes, starts to mix up his looks, and you're asking a young quarterback to beat Nick Saban at his game.
And look, it almost happened. But speaking of young quarterbacks, Joey, as Joey Galloway with us, our college football analyst, and obviously played in the NFL, wide receiver for 15 years. Joey, I thought one play, and we talked about this earlier, and I'd love to get your interpretation on it, that was really key to Tua in that second half. He goes 3 and out on that first drive, and then he has that 3rd and 7 on the second drive, and he rolls right, and it looks for all the world like he's going to be brought down by not 1, not 2, but 3 Georgia defenders. Somehow they sort of clang off each other, and he's able to run back to the left and get the first down, which eventually led to Alabama's first points in that game. How important mentally do you think that play was for him to sort of settle him down?
I think you need a play. You're absolutely right. It didn't start off great. And so in this situation, you need a play. And for a lot of young quarterbacks, that play sometimes ends up happening running the football, because you just need to move the chains. You just need to get your team excited, get some momentum. And so there were a couple plays. I mean, how about the 4th and 4 throw to the end zone? And I still don't think he could see Wrigley coming across the field.
Neither does Kurt Warner, by the way, who tweeted that. He's with you.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you see the replay, and he's not even in the screen when he cuts the ball loose, and then he comes across and catches it. And so, you know, between that run that you're talking about and the 4th and 4 that you're talking about, sometimes things go right. You know what I mean? Sometimes things fall in your lap, and if you're Georgia, you're looking back and you're kicking yourself, because those are 2 plays. And you never, ever want to boil a game down to 2 plays. But those are 2 that Georgia really had a chance to change the game.
Joey, first a game next year, is Tua or Jalen behind center?
Oh, man. It would be hard to imagine Tua not being the quarterback now, as hard as it was to imagine Jalen Hurts not being the quarterback this season, all season long. But you could just tell play calling wise, they were able to just call whatever they wanted. They could really go into the play side of the playbook. I mean, the throwing side of the playbook, and say, yeah, we can call any one of these. And they were letting him stand in the pocket, look downfield. It wasn't just quick throws, which, you throw a young quarterback out there, you're thinking there's going to be some quick throws, some screens, some swing passes, which is a huge part of Alabama's offense anyhow. But it wasn't. It was 5-step drop. It was sit in the pocket, look downfield, wait for the crossing routes. And so it would be hard to imagine Alabama going back to a limited offense because they don't trust Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the ball. So I'm going to say Tua would be the starter moving forward unless he just loses it in the spring.
Well, again, it looks like, even Jalen Hurts said he has that it factor, what he talked about.
Right.
It certainly seems like things are trending Tua's way, and things are trending Joey's way, because he's going to put that peg in the ground. That is mad respect for you, my friend. Thanks for being with us. And call Booger out for being as marshmallow soft as he actually is, all right?
He will never, ever live this one down.
No, it's ridiculous. Ever. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment.
Thanks,
all right, Joey. Appreciate you being with us this morning, and hit him straight, my friend.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Joey Galloway with us here on Golic and Wingo. Look, obviously, Alabama goes into next season as the national champs, defending national champs, but with who they have, would you rather be Georgia or would you rather be Alabama next year? We'll discuss it next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.
Sports Center brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. To win a basketball, you got to play some great coverage, correct? And with Straight Talk Wireless, you know you're getting great coverage because they use the exact same 4G LTE towers as the big carriers, but for a lot less. Straight Talk Wireless, only at Walmart. Refer to terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Golic and Wingo with you on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. We're all basking in the glow of another Alabama championship, 5 in the last 9 years. mean, think about that. I mean,
it's incredible.
We marvel at what the Patriots have done in the run with Brady and Belichick. It's 5 since 2001, which is 16 years. So we have 5 in 9 years for Alabama, 6 for Nick Saban in total when you consider his championship at LSU. And I just want to pose this question to you. We had 6 head coaching openings in the NFL. 2 have been filled, John Gruden and Matt Nagy.
Right.
Gruden to the Raiders, which will be announced later on today, and Matt Nagy to the to Chicago Bears. But there are 4 open head coaching jobs in the NFL. You have the New York Giants, you have the Indianapolis Colts, you have the Arizona Cardinals, and you have the Detroit Lions. Would you not, if you are one of those 4 teams, at least make a phone call to Tuscaloosa to see if there's any way you might be able to pry Nick Saban back into having another opportunity to coach in the NFL? Obviously, it didn't work out in Miami. The premise being, what else do you have to prove at the college level?
Oh, you don't. I mean, for him to go, and I've said it about free agent players and or coaches that want to make a move, everybody's in a different situation.
Yes.
You're a young coach that's using another school as a stepping stone to get to bigger school. You're a young player looking for money. You're an older player looking for a ring. So there's always different reasons or different driving forces for you. For Nick Saban to go back to the NFL, what would the driving force be? Success, right?
Yes.
Because he didn't have the success when he went there. And a lot of it, quite as he even said, if we pass Drew Brees on the physical and take him in Miami, he goes, I may still be coaching in the NFL.
Correct.
Which could be very correct. But it didn't go well for him there in Miami. So that would be the reason to go back. But if you're one of those teams, the first thing you better be ready to do, it's just like if you're going to sign Kirk Cousins, it starts at $100 million. This starts at $11 million. Yeah. You're making $11 million at Alabama. So you're going to bring him onto a pro team. You know you're going to bring him to kind of run everything. So it's going to be at least $11 million for you. We just all went nuts on, oh my God, they gave Gruden 10 years at $10 million, and more power to him for that. Now, I don't know if Nick gets a 10-year deal because he's a lot older. We can get
66.
the ages.
I think he's 66
and
Gruden's 54. I think Gruden's
55. So talking a decade or so older, so he's not going to get that length, but you're going to spend that money. And so does a team want to spend that money? That's number one. You have to go in knowing that. And then if you are, is it worth making the call? Sure. Yeah. I don't think there's any way on God's green earth he's going back to the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think he will either. But if you're Bob Quinn, who obviously is a GM for the Lions, who grew up with Bill Belichick and came from that system, and obviously Bill and Nick are basically, the same thing, just one in college and one at the NFL. I don't know if you could pry him away, but my God, with everything that we see in the coaches that come through in the NFL, how do you not at least try? How do you not at least stir the pot to see if you can find a way to say, hey, look, you could stay there and you could be the greatest coach and you could win 3 more championships at Alabama, or you could do the one thing that's missing from your resume, the one thing that you can't say, that you had success as a head coach in the NFL. And Nick Saban, if you're the ultimate competitor, do you really want to end your career not knowing that you could have had success at the NFL level? I mean, that's the button you have to push.
And you know what made down that whole thing?
Yeah.
Is Nick saying, wife doesn't want to go.
Also true. Also true. I mean, look,
I don't want to go, but you know what? Wife doesn't want to go.
David Shaw, the head coach at Stanford, has always said, you got to find me a place to live and work that my wife's happy better than Palo Alto, California. And I understand that. But at the end of the day, don't you have to try? You have to make the inquiry, right?
Well, I guess, maybe people have already done it by backdoor channels. We know that happens all the time to see if there's going to be interest at all. Quite honestly, I don't think he's interested, and I don't see anybody losing their mind. I don't see anybody going, we'll give you $15 million a year. The dude, he's the only one coaching in sports who can hear the John Gruden contract and go, so what? I'm making more. He's making more. He's making $11 million. He's making more than Gruden right now, and everybody lost their minds on Gruden. Now, again, that's $100 million over the 10 years, but you know what I mean. So I don't think he's taking one step out of Alabama. I think he's going to be coaching there, and I think he's going to rack up more national championships as early as next year, possibly.
Right. I don't think he is either, but and I don't think the money would do it. I think the only way to poke the bear would be to go, there's that one little thing missing on your resume. You've done this, you've done this, and you've been great at this. Let's try this.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't think any team would be successful, but boy, I'd get on the bat phone, and that would be the first call I would make. All right, coming up, we'll get the perspective of Kirk Herbstreit, who called the national championship game on television for ESPN, and his thoughts on the quarterback switch, and maybe calling Nick Saban next. Golic and Wingo, or Golic and Wingo in English.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.